And Jacob went out from Beersheba and went toward Haran. And he alighted upon a certain place and tarried there all night, because the sun was set. And he took of the stones of that place and put them for his pillows, and laid down in that place to sleep. And he dreamed. And behold, a ladder was set on the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven. And behold, the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. And behold, the Lord stood above it, and said, I am the Lord God of Abraham thy father, and the God of Isaac. And behold, I am with thee, will keep thee in all places whither thou goest, and will bring thee again into this land. For I will not leave thee until I have done that which I have spoken to thee of. And Jacob awakened out of his sleep, and he said, Surely the Lord is in this place, and I knew it not.
The most transformational gift ACU has ever received was in the late 90s in the process of receiving the Grace Woodward Trust through Bob and Mary Woodward. It was quite a story in and of itself in that this was an unsolicited gift. When Bob made the gift to us, it was a little over $16 million at the time. A year later, when we received the gift, it was over $26 million. Grace Woodward was a humble woman, didn't call a lot of attention to herself. She just was a quiet servant, I guess you might say. Grace, through the legacy of her son and his determination to be a good steward of what she had entrusted to him, is also part of the story. And it's a story that we want repeated many times in generations to come.
She gave what she could give. She gave her money, and I gave what I could give. I gave my talent, my hard work to it. And maybe it's just a reminder that when we do things, we don't have to always do small things. We should think big, think large. She did, I did, and the people that gave the money for the project did. And maybe we should learn from that. Maybe we don't think big enough, often enough.
When I first met Jack, I had no clue that he had the ability that he had, because he doesn't ever talk about it. He just does it. You know, he's a very humble person, but when you look at his work, you think, well, man, this guy should be, you know, boisterous about it or something, but he's not. He's just really humble, but God works through him in an amazing way.
It's hard to really say where the angel idea came from. I think possibly 5 or 6 years ago, my wife and I went down to the French Riviera. We went to the city of Nice, and there's a kind of a plateau up above the city with a cemetery there. And we just had gone up some steps up to the top of this hill to just get a better view of the ocean. And there were all these angels. I mean, it was pretty incredible in the cemetery. They were marble angels, and a lot of them were stained. But I was really moved by that profoundly, I think, and I think brought that back somehow. And I think maybe that was the genesis of the idea. I decided with the angels to not do the traditional young female angel with tiny wings or little flying cherub babies. I wanted to do older beings that were strong and powerful, muscular, that could represent God's messengers on earth. I decided to make the angels get older and more patriarchal in a sense as they neared the surface of the earth.
Jack stayed focused during the entire 5 years of the sculpture. But there were times when he would start to get a little bit discouraged and think there wasn't any way he was going to finish it. And so mostly my role was encouragement and telling him that he would finish it, and getting him to understand that we would all do whatever it took to get him through this. And at one point, he was even thinking that he was not going to live to see the end of the sculpture. So he wanted me to sign papers saying that if something happened to him, I would finish the sculpture, which was ridiculous.
There are a lot of pressures associated with this particular project. Most of them had to do with time. There was not enough time. It was important for students to be involved in this project, not just because I was being kind, being benevolent. I needed them. I mean, it was necessity. I needed all the people I could find to help. And I was in a great position to know which students were really talented and which ones would be reliable, which ones would be interested, and I chose those students, and not one of them let me down. They were great.
It was really an honor to work as a student with Jack, because obviously Jack has worked a number of years as a sculptor, and for me to come in and be a part of it was very new, but he did trust me, I guess, because I had taken classes with him, and so it was a great experience for me. I learned a lot, and I was able to use artistic skills in a different way. And I felt that, I know this is going to be a part of my life forever. I'll be able to say I helped with that.
Try like moving your thumb. No, it's more like it's got to be natural, like you're reaching. But okay. I don't know. Like, what if you really put strain on it? Like you're really reaching. Is that how you do it? Like you're about to grab another rung? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Having students working on this project was pure Jack Maxwell, but it was wonderful. The fact that he would relinquish that kind of artistic power or control over the piece, he was willing to do that. And for them to be able to experience that and to know that they had a part in it is a wonderful thing for an art student to come here and to have that level of experience, I think is very unique.
I think some of the things that strike me about this sculpture are that the size is something that's just unexpected. And then secondly, and I think maybe more importantly, is the complexity. That the more you think about it, the more you look at it, the more you study it, the more you stand and take it in, the more that you see the depth that Jack put into the thought process as he was designing the piece. Jack called me over one day and said, "I have something I want you to look at that I think you'll find interesting." I walked over to his office, and immediately when I saw the project, the model that he had shown, I thought, this is going to be incredible. That this is a world-class piece of art if we can figure out how to sell it.
I'm headed down to Bastrop to deep in the heart Foundry to check out my sculpture. It's actually 5 years of my life that I'm coming down to see, but it's what I'm actually going to see is an 8-foot maquette, a model for a finished piece, a piece that's going to be completed in about a year, that'll be 32 feet tall. So this is the first step and the first time I've seen in metal what I spent all summer working on in clay.
Owning a foundry is a unique business to be in and operate.
How heavy do you think this wing will be when it's cast, full size?
Full size, it'll probably be about 400 pounds. It's kind of a odd combination of craftsmen, of welders, of technicians, all coming together to work and finish these huge pieces that end up standing for the next 2,000-3,000 years. All these little problems and we'll get ready to do patina.
Okay.
This is Clover. She did all the metal work on it.
Hi, Clover.
What I can do is weld that.
That's the primary area that I have a little bit of problem with.
Yeah, there you go.
I think this is going to change it quite a bit.
It takes a very special person to work in every facet of the foundry, but specifically in the pour yard, specifically in the metal shop, because communication is limited because it's just the noise. The head of my patina department, Rebecca Barker, who's an alumnus from ACU and a student of Jack Maxwell's, is the last quality control step in the line. Everything that goes out the door has to be patinaed. Basically our production depends on the quality and the look of the piece going out of the shop. And so she has a pretty big job to not only be able to make the pieces the right color, but also to check the quality of all the steps prior to her. Once the artist sculpts the maquette, which is a small version of the final process, we have to make a production mold on that. So we make a rubber mold off of that piece. Then we basically use that mold to create a bronze at scale. That is then scanned by a computer with a laser, and that information is taken into CAD, and then we're allowed to transfer that information to a mill. And we actually mill the piece out of styrofoam at whatever the size is that we're shooting for. So in this case, it's 1.5 life size. And then we had the task of assembling the styrofoam in a way that we could actually work on it, mold it, and create the final sculpture, but not all in one 20, 30 foot tall piece.
Now how is this going up?
Well, what we're going to do is we pin the arms and legs temporarily with these skewers, and that allows us to find our placement.
After that process was done, the pieces were moved to Abilene, where Jack Maxwell sculpted clay onto the styrofoam surface and finished out all the detail at the 1.5 life size that the final piece was going to be.
I think the thing I learned from this project about myself is that I need to rely on other people more and not try to do everything completely by myself. I needed the students. I needed so many other people. It's not a one-person operation. I didn't realize that in the beginning. And being dependent on others is not a bad thing. It's a good thing. I learned a lot of things about God on this project. How many times do you feel like God really cares about this thing? But I felt like he cared about this. I really feel like he cared about this. And I saw that in so many ways and I felt like I had a vision for it. But maybe God had another vision for it. And I'm sure his might be a little better than mine because things didn't always turn out like I thought they would. I remember one incident where the lower angel, when it was in clay and really heavy, fell off the supports. I happened to be there. I was on the phone to the Foundry, and I'm standing there right beside it, and it falls. Well, it could have fallen any time during the night. It falls right when I'm there. I grab it. I try to, prop it up, and I do all these things to it. It changed the pose. Now that bottom angel's way twisted around. Maybe God wanted it in that pose because it's a lot better than what I had. I would have never put it in that pose, but that's where it ended up.
Right, this is going to have a concrete core, and then you're going to put the limestone on the outside of it to support the
Right,
structure,
and I don't know, I'm thinking it'll be square like that.
The challenges for putting this piece of art together were numerous, but I had no one to call that had ever done this before, because it's a unique piece. There is no piece like this in the world. And so when we looked at problems that came up, we had to sit down and just make decisions and try to put it together.
Well, Leuders limestone is unique in the United States. It's 90% marble, so it'll polish just like marble. And because of the variety of colors that we have, it's unique throughout the world. We ship a lot to Canada and to China. Leuders limestone is probably the easiest to quarry of any stone there is. We do it, it comes in layers of different sizes and different colors, and we simply break that stone out, and then we ship it a quarter mile to our manufacturing plant where we manufacture it to whatever specifications the customer needs.
Like a stone like that could be almost any size stone, but these stones that are in the middle, we're going to have to dig up.
As you started setting the bottom stones, they had to be very precise in their location, turned at the exact angle, because the next ones that went on top of them was a different size, a different shape. They had to go at a different angle, and all the heights were very critical in order to achieve what Jack was trying to portray. So it was a very challenging project, because we had no reference points whatsoever to start out with. I've worked on many large projects over my time in the business, and I've seen a spirit of cooperation out there like I've never seen on any other project that I've ever worked on. There was no arguments, there was nobody upset with another trade, and everybody just totally worked together in order to make this project come off in the amount of time that was allotted.
I remember very clearly the lowest point of the whole project. It was about 10 days before the dedication date in September. It had come a flood, and we found out from the Foundry that they were not sure whether they could meet the deadline. And so we all got together in a room, and I asked the inevitable question, can we do it by a week from Monday? Can we do it, or should we postpone the dedication? I got my answer by looking at Jack, and his countenance fell, as the scripture says. His countenance fell, and he said, "We must do it." As I observed, particularly the final weeks and days of the project, a remarkable thing happened. The men and women who were working on the project got swept up into the project, and that's a rare thing. They stayed late, they came early, they worked extra, they worked weekends, they worked at night. And when I talked to some of the people, they were visibly moved by what they saw and what they were part of. They sensed that they were a part of history, and they were a part of something larger than themselves.
I love the fact that what I do, I'm able to use my hands, and you might say have a hands-on experience with it. When I seen Jacob's dream, it was one that I couldn't keep my hands off of, and I literally had to
you might say, roll up my sleeves and dive into it because of what it stood for.
Originally, we had told Jack that we would install 2 weeks prior to the anniversary. That became very clear that we weren't going to be able to do that about a month prior to the installation, and we started talking with Jack, how far could we push back the installation. I told Jack that we were going to install it the day before, and he was very concerned, but I told him that we could do it. We were planning to leave at 8 o'clock that morning with the piece. Due to circumstances, we ended up leaving about 2 in the afternoon. We drove straight to Abilene and got there, I think, about 6:30. We immediately hit the ground running in 2 shifts.
Trying to let those wings touch the ground just to keep it from spinning. Can you come forward a bit?
The crane operators worked through the night with us. After staying up all night, we worked until 9:50, pulled down the scaffolding, took away all of the debris and everything that we had created, and it was a huge sigh of relief for everyone. And I can remember the moment Jack had stayed with us until 3 o'clock in the morning watching, and not having a lot of faith that we were actually going to pull it off when he left to go home for the evening. When he arrived and walked up the hill and saw us taking down the scaffolding, he immediately started crying. And that was pretty moving to me to realize that we had accomplished it, and he was crying out of joy that we had actually pulled it off and it was finished and it was going to look right for the ceremony.
At the dedication ceremony, I had my family, and we went up to look at it up close and look at everything, and took the girls over to the baptistry. It was neat because later we had some friends in town, and when we got out of the car to look at the sculpture, Miranda, our oldest, immediately ran to the stone to show them the cross. And our middle daughter, who's 5, was standing over by the baptistry, and I heard her tell one of her little friends that was where her daddy was going to baptize her and her sissy.
I didn't know till Saturday morning, the day of the dedication. I was writing my speech, which I thought maybe I'll have to change the speech. So I sent my daughter up to school to see if the angels were there. Because if they weren't there, I had an apology speech that I had to write. And she came back and said, Dad, the angels are standing. And I thought, well, thank God they're there. And at that time, I thought, well, it's going to happen then, and that it's really going to be finished.
Looked at it together for a minute and hugged and talked about the hopes and dreams of what it would mean to others when they came, and that we wanted it to be a place that people would come to and reflect on their spiritual relationship with God. And Jack felt like we had achieved that, so it was wonderful.
I was out there fairly late one evening, and some kids were bringing their mom up there, and she was on a walker, and they wanted her to see where they could line up and see the cross and the stones. And they got her up there to it, and she kept saying, I don't see anything, I can't see anything. Then finally she got lined up just perfect and she could see. And she was looking through the stone, and all of a sudden there was just silence there. She didn't say a word. And then her kids were standing on each side of her, and she reaches out with both hands and grabs their hands. And at that moment I realized this is special.
When I was really young, I wanted to be a missionary. And I had no gifts for being a missionary. You have to be bold, and you have to be able to learn languages, and you have to do a lot of good things that I didn't have in me. I just wasn't that kind of person. I'm not a minister, and I'm not a missionary, but I actually was able to use my gifts to do what they do. And it just reminded me too that, hey, I shouldn't feel upset that I'm not a great public speaker. I should feel honored that I have other gifts and God was used them through me. And I don't know why I had that opportunity, and not everyone does, but I'm really thankful. You know, you feel like you were born to do something. Maybe I was born to do this. Maybe.
ACU is a good place for Jacob's dream because it is at the heart of the identity of this university. It's at the heart of our soul. That's who we are. We're people of God. And like Jacob, we don't get it right all the time. But like Jacob, we know that surely God is in this place.